Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you here. I'm Robert McBride. I work at a radio station in Portland we call All Classical FM, which I know you all listen to religiously, right? Okay. I like these people. This, of course, you can tell by the hair, is Carlos Kalmar, the music director of the Oregon Symphony.
Good evening. One of these days I will shave it off. No, I will not. Trust me. No.
Well, you could probably do that to raise money for some worthy cause.
You can't pay enough money to get that. No, because...
There is no cause worthy enough?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, I always admire people who shave their head because they must have very beautiful... The form of the skull has to be. And I don't think I have that. And on top of that...
Well, how would you know?
And on top of that, at least allow me my half second of vanity. I always believe that if I shave it off, then it will grow back, and it will be all white or something. No, not going there.
It's nice to see you again.
Hey.
It seems to me like it's been ages since we were sitting here doing this.
Well, I have been here, I think, 5 weeks ago.
Where was I? Actually, I do want to ask you about your travels because, since you and I talked last time, you've conducted the Boston Symphony and you've conducted the Chicago Symphony. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on both of those. Ironically, when Carlos was in Boston conducting the premiere of a new double concerto for violin and cello by John Harbison, Pinchas Zukerman and Amanda Forsyth were here doing the Brahms double concerto.
That's really ironic, yeah.
And they dropped by All Classical and we chatted one afternoon. And Zukerman said, on behalf of both of them, we are in awe of this orchestra.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah. I mean, I can only say that it's not the first time that this happens, but every time it happens and it comes from the mouth of one of the great musicians of our time, I'm so proud of our own orchestra. And matter of fact, I know that Pinchas already told the orchestra, this is what happened. The day after Pinchas Zukerman left, his agent sent a note to Elaine Calder, the president of the Oregon Symphony, which was also forwarded to me, saying that Pinchas has been incredibly satisfied by the response and the quality of the orchestra, and he would love to come back. And I, being the music director that I am, I of course said like, nah. So I said, well, excuse me, what's the question? When are you coming? Tomorrow? And then I talked to members of the orchestra thinking they should know this. And matter of fact, Pinchas has told them, because at one point when he was conducting, he said, hey guys, what are we playing the next time I come? This is a great message.
Yes, it is. Let me put in a request. The cello concerto that Amanda's dad wrote for her, which is a really cool piece.
Well, I mean, I don't know how we will make this happen.
I do this to him all the time, and he says, whatever.
But I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you. Okay, so here's a question you won't answer.
Okay.
Which orchestra is better, Boston or Chicago?
Oh, that they are so different. And I can't tell because the programs I conducted are incredibly different, and in a way, so to speak, they are great orchestras. The best orchestra, however, is the Oregon Symphony.
And it has achieved that lofty status in large measure by your support, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you to you, Carlos, for all you've done with the orchestra. It's just been wonderful having you here.
I'm glad to be home.
The first piece on tonight's concert is so beautiful, and it is so melancholy. And this is the second of these little pieces you've brought us that Sibelius wrote for a play called Death, written by his brother-in-law. I don't know anything about the play except the title. Are you going to bring us all four of them someday?
I don't know. I thought about bringing all the Kuolema, which is based on a play by Arvid Jarnefeld. But I don't know. And of course, after conducting in rehearsal this piece and remembering the other one, which is also incredibly beautiful, very tender, very soft, and melancholic, I think, well, no wonder that the Finnish people, they always have to, it's cold there and you have to drink a lot of vodka to survive that. But it goes beyond that. But this little piece, it is again one of the gazillion ways to prove that you do not have to be very complicated in the way you say what you have to say musically to achieve a great result. Because the canzonetta is exactly what it is, a little song. There is nothing complicated, the harmonies are not really out of the ordinary, and still it has a very tender flow. And that's all that has to be said about this piece. And whether it has something to do with the play and at what point it is put in the play, and yeah, sure. It is the husband kind of appearing as the death to the wife and the son looking, and not important. Doesn't really matter for what the music is.
So you do know a little about the play?
I know very little about the play, and Nordic, meaningful. Yeah.
Swig that vodka while you're watching it. Well, interestingly, Sibelius's brother-in-law, who wrote the play, one of his brothers was a pretty good composer. So he could have asked him to write the music, but he asked Sibelius because Sibelius was a better and more famous composer.
Yeah, and I don't know about the brother because, this leads already to the second piece you're going to hear, which is another piece by Sibelius, maybe not entirely as melancholic as the first, or not alone melancholic, because the first piece you're going to hear, this canzonetta, is a string piece. And in a way, the reason why later Sibelius wrote his violin concerto is because it's always the question, did he write it for himself? Which probably, I would say, probably not. Because
well, I've always thought of it, he wrote it for the himself that he wished he could have been.
That's the point.
Yeah.
In that regard, I could write a violin concerto myself if I would have any compositional skills. But the point is that he was asked by Jarnefeld to write this probably because there was more talent to be nurtured there. And the violin concerto, it's one of the things that we as, in a way, as parents sometimes do, which is whatever we have not been able to achieve in life, we try to get it through our children. Not a good idea, but in a way, Sibelius was not one of the greatest violinists of his time. He just played the violin. And then he writes this concerto, and if he would have written this concerto for himself, it would have probably be way less difficult, because, boy, this piece is tricky. Very difficult for the soloist.
Sibelius did actually audition for the Vienna Philharmonic, but he didn't make it in. Now, you played the violin for many years. Did you ever attempt any part of the Sibelius concerto?
Well, the good news about this concerto, as with maybe another that comes to mind, which starts in a very similar way, is that, of course, you start to study, and the first time the violinist plays the melody, it's so insanely beautiful. But then comes already the first cadenza, and you think like, no, I can't play it anyway, so let me just stop right there. And then you look at the last movement, and you just stay very far away from that one. Because, when you are just an average violinist, what you can really play the beginning of Sibelius. You can really, for the most part, play the second movement. But in the third movement, oh boy, you're in real trouble technically. So, no, this is not one of the concertos. And also I have to admit, in regards to the school where I came from, which is the Vienna school, we at that time when I was a student, we tended in the mid to later 70s, we tended to learn all the classical German-based culturally concertos first. Mozart, Mendelssohn, Brahms, Beethoven. And maybe Tchaikovsky was the exception. And then we went to others, and I just didn't make it to the others. Saved me from practicing more.
When our soloist, Midori, walks on stage tonight and you see how young she looks, think about the fact that she's been playing this concerto for 30 years. She started working on it when she was 8, and she's 38 now.
Oh, she told you?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I knew how old she is.
Yeah. And she is such an incredibly talented human being, and so generous with her time and her money. She has started foundations everywhere from Manhattan to Mongolia that make music education opportunities possible for people who wouldn't otherwise have them. And she doesn't just throw money at these things, she travels to them and she works with the kids. And she heads up the string program at UCLA, and then she does, almost 100 concerts a year. She's just giving so much. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and this is a violinist who got to be very, very famous at an extremely young age, a true child prodigy. And I remember that, I think it was her first concerto with the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, which, of course, everybody thinks this is kind of the crown jewel that you have to add to your biography. And I even remember that it didn't take place in the Vienna Concert Hall or the Musikverein. It was in the opera, and she played. I think she was 12, something like that, a kid. She played Sarasate, and we were all on the radio or wherever we could and listened and thought like, oh my God, this youngster can really play. And then, of course, you observe as she matures and she does other things. And finally, I got to meet her. I worked with her in Frankfurt, doing one of the Prokofiev concerti. And then many, many years went by, and we did Brahms concerto together in Dallas, here in the country. And now she's coming here. I'm very glad that she's here.
Me too. She has an extraordinarily beautiful violin. I was just looking at it in her dressing room and listening to her play a little, that is on loan to her from a foundation in Japan for her entire life. This 275-year-old Guarnerius violin that she can use all her life. She never has to buy one. Maybe that's one reason why she's able to be so generous with her money in other ways. Well, those things are millions of dollars.
Well, it's very simple. Just talking about instruments in general, meaning string instruments, if young artists need great instruments. Now, of course, the value of an instrument it's driven by the market, and the prices for instruments such as the one that Midori is playing have went over the last 10, 15 years through the roof in a way that you cannot even think about. Which means that anybody thinking, if you think backwards, you think there is a stellar talent in Japan, barely 13 years old, or even if she would be 17, it doesn't really matter. And she is, of course, she deserves a great instrument, and she will probably not be able to get one or buy one. Ever. Because we are talking, I don't know, I don't talk about money with Midori, and it's beyond the point how much that instrument is worth. But the best instruments you can get, violins on our days, meaning the high quality Guarneri or the Stradivarius, the good ones, $2.5 to $4 million, easy.
And then you have to pay to insure the thing.
And it's an instrument this size.
Right. The Sibelius Concerto is such an amazing piece of music. It is so dramatic, and it covers so many different bases technically in the violin part and in the orchestra and in the moods that we experience listening to it. It's become the most recorded and probably the most performed 20th century violin concerto, and I think hearing it in this room tonight played by you guys is going to be spectacular.
Well, the interesting point about this concerto is, yes, it's probably one of the most popular, most recorded, but it didn't start that way. I mean, when this piece was written and first premiered, for whatever reason, instead of postponing the premiere of the piece, I don't know whether this is correct English, but Sibelius preponed the premiere. He did the premiere earlier than the premiere was supposed to be, and of course nothing was really ready, and that includes the poor violinist who had to play the premiere. Because, excuse me, violinists have to pace things a certain way, specifically with a piece that is new and so incredibly difficult, and it was not ready. It was no success, and a little bit later it was revised and played a second time, premiered a second time, and as far as I know, the conductor on the podium of that time was quite a famous guy by the name of Richard Strauss. And some people alluded to a great musician like Jascha Heifetz, that we ought to know this piece, because Heifetz kind of took it on himself to undust this music and to put it in front of us, and everybody went like, oh my God, that's a great piece. That, let's just remember this, it happens on occasion that pieces that have been around for ages all of a sudden get to be very well known and remain then in the repertoire. It starts with the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, without Mendelssohn taking it upon himself to introduce Bach to music. Who knows what would have happened? It counts for a violin concerto that, like the one that Erich Wolfgang Korngold wrote and that Jun Iwasaki played so beautifully and masterfully last year, and so on and so on. And this is one of those. And the thing that is so interesting about this music is it gives you also something very typical of Sibelius, which is, on one side, the scope of a very big land. I don't know whether you have ever been in Finland visiting the country. I have. Although I have to say I have not been in the northern part, which is probably more of what Finland is about, just in a very cold way, because, I mean, we're talking about ice and snow there. But Finland is very beautiful and is a country of the 100,000 lakes. Because actually what you see in Finland is trees, lakes all the time. It's quite incredible. And so if you have this vastness, and I remember that one time in a winter that was very cold, I was in Finland, and I really had this pleasure that you have in Finland, that you walk on water. You can. Yes, you can. Meaning the lakes freeze in the winter, and you walk over the lakes from one end to the other over water safely. There are people who drive over water, but they have to know what they are doing. So, and that majestic scope of things is being displayed in this music, and that is the incredible beauty of it. And then there are other elements that have something to do with the technical aspects of the violin playing, because it's a very, very virtuosic concert. Meaning what the soloist Midori has to do goes pretty much to the limits of what somebody is able to do on a violin. The obvious of that is when she plays the last movement, with this incredibly fast, tricky double stops. That is, every time I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah. But it goes beyond that. There is this crucial moment in the exact middle of the second movement, where the energy of the orchestra drives you pretty much like you think, now comes a climax, and instead of a climax, he drops out Sibelius, and then in the orchestra gets extremely quiet, and all you hear is the soloist playing 2 melodies at the time. Incredible. How can you play 2 melodies, not one after the other, at the same time, on a little instrument like the violin? Yes, even that you can, and she can.
What about that bit where the violin plays a trill and also does a cuckoo thing? Does she do both of those at the same time?
Of course she does. I mean,
how do you do that? Because I haven't watched anybody play this. I've only heard recordings of it.
Well, watch what she does.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, this is, of course, when I play that, don't ask me. When I play that, this is the thing. Yes, you trill on one string, and then you play this ti-ta-ta-ta-ta-ti-ti-ta on the other string. If I play that, because of the lack of technique that I have on my bow arm, it probably would sound like bumps, like whoop, 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 whip, beep, whoop. And I mean, it's not a trick, it's a skill that you have to, this ba-ta-ta-ta has to be there, but on top of that, the trill has to be always consistently.
Right. That's not possible.
Oh yeah, listen to her, she can do it.
Okay. All right. Now, as usual, the folks from Classical Millennium are here tonight. They have a table out in the lobby. They've got Midori's recording of the Sibelius Concerto with the Israel Philharmonic. They've got Carlos recordings. They've got Oregon Symphony recordings, other Midori recordings as well. So you can check them out at intermission or after the concert. I love the fact that you've got Sibelius and Tchaikovsky on this program, because Tchaikovsky was a big influence on Sibelius, which he acknowledged, and you can certainly hear it, especially in his first symphony, which is like 3/4 Sibelius and 1/4 Tchaikovsky. And I just read today that when Sibelius was very old, and he lived to be 91, that he enjoyed listening to Tchaikovsky ballet suites.
I wanted to say one thing about Sibelius, meaning typical Sibelius, because I gave you this picture of the land. One other very interesting thing about Sibelius, if you listen to the ending of the concerto that you're going to hear, I assume that your reaction will be like, something is missing, but you don't know what it is. And it's not that he omitted something. I had to learn from Finnish people what it actually is. Great concerto, even quite long concerto, and then at the end of this, it's like, and it's over. Not like ta-ta, ta-ta, or none of that. It's just like that. And I thought, like, I need more. Until I heard actually that a conductor whom you know very well and whom we adore here in Oregon, Hannu Lintu, he conducted the Sibelius Symphony that had exactly the same. Some symphonies of Sibelius had the same, and he explained it in a way that I remember always, because he said Finnish people are not extremely emotionally they are not Italians, right? Where at the end, when you say goodbye to Italians, it's oh my God, and no, it's you had a substantial conversation, and then goodbye. That's it. Nothing, no formula like we will see each other in London and so on, and kisses to your bride or whoever. No, it's like la la la. Goodbye. Listen to the ending. It's like substance, auf Wiedersehen.
How do you say auf Wiedersehen in Finnish? I wonder. I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I would love to go to Finland someday and see that landscape. There's so much incredible music that has come from that little country. It's really amazing.
And nowadays, a lot.
Oh, yeah. There's so many wonderful composers there.
Yeah, and great conductors.
Great conductors, yes. All right, Tchaikovsky, Symphony number 5. You must have very happy clarinetists and very happy bassoonists on this program, because they get to do cool things in both of those pieces. And the horns in the Tchaikovsky, oh my goodness. Big, wonderful stuff in this symphony. And I have a question for you. Oh dear, we're running out of time. But I have a question for you anyway. you have to use all of your brain when you do the work that you do. And we, as non-musician listener types, we can just let the music wash over us, and we can take it in emotional terms only. Tchaikovsky, very much heart on sleeve, emotional. But you're thinking about the means to that end as well. You're thinking changes of key and tempo and modulations and all that kind of stuff. You have to analyze, you have to understand the music. So you're always finding that line. Where are you being objective, and where are you pouring your heart out on the stage? And I think with some conductors, finding that line would be more difficult and more crucial, and Tchaikovsky would be one of those guys, right? Because you could really overdo it.
Oh yeah, easily. The thing is that I believe very strongly that most of us interpreters, not only conductors, but let's stick with conductors, actually want to do what the composer wrote, which would make all the interpretations equal, right? And theoretically, it doesn't happen that way. And I'm very aware that actually whatever I'm capable of doing is it's in a way, there is no objectivity. I think there cannot be objectivity.
There's never objectivity with humans.
In art.
Yeah, well, in anything.
As kind of the lead head in an interpretation like Tchaikovsky 5, I have to have a point of view. And of course I have a point of view, and of course I try to serve the piece and the composer to the best of my abilities. And I try not to change things other than in the context of what I think the composer meant. However, I have to take very much into consideration that whenever I do something, it is through the lens of my little brain or my little imagination that I have. So it's my way of reading something that somebody other than myself wrote. And by that, the interpretation gets personal. Now, of course, you pitch it towards the emotional side of Tchaikovsky. There is a lot of emotion. And what can I say? If you want to label any interpretation of music that at least I'm part of as I'm just making this up. If there are critics in the room, just don't quote me. But if you label that as slightly intellectually aware instead of, come on, bring it on, it's all emotion, I can live with that. I can live with I don't care. This is not, it's, in the end, it's not about what exactly I feel. One thing I also believe very strongly, and Tchaikovsky is a great tool to do that, is interpretation of classical music, the balance between the three most important things that we make music with, which is this, and this, meaning the head, the heart, the soul. That it has to be balanced. And of course, Tchaikovsky, we are going to hear a symphony that is very romantic. It is on parts very darkish and always reminds you of fate and tragic events. And of course, it's Tchaikovsky, having kind of your feelings on your sleeve. And you can be driven by that. And you can overdo it a lot. But for me, whether you overdo it or not, it's not even up to me to judge. It's actually up to the audience, whoever listens. I can only present, together with the orchestra, a point of view of how. And I would really not like to talk so much about why. It has to be as it is. Because I don't like to talk so much about why have you decided on that tempo? What has driven you? Not interesting. You don't need to know. And actually, and I don't need to. It's not something I can explain. If I would explain something that I do musically in words, I probably would quit my job and finally get to write books. but I'm very glad that I cannot write books. All I can do is make a little bit of music.
And you, very soon, will get to hear that music making. I think you've made the right choice because there's a good chance the Oregon Symphony will play better tonight than the Portland Trail Blazers. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the concert.